we share a bit about what's going on here at Zumbro, that you remind us of what all of this is about, and it's about honoring your creation and sharing your love with everyone. In your name we pray. Amen. Well, thanks. This is our first Zen Talk of the season, isn't it? This is it. So I got brought in on this one, so to kick us off. So really what we're going to do today is I'm really just going to share a few things that are going on that you may not know about, that you just might not be in your circles and how we plug in at Zumbro, that not everybody knows, and kind of some exciting things, I think, or at least some markers that can continue hopefully to lead us to some excitement. So really this is about setting some things up that you may have questions about. So this will be, I'm not really going to wait to the end for questions. You feel free to jump right on in. That's kind of what this is about, is to kind of give you a glimpse of a few things and to give you the opportunity to ask some questions about those things or other things if you wish. But that's kind of what the deal is. Now, some of you know, the first thing I want to talk about is our children, youth, and family. We changed some things up, about 2 years ago or so, on Wednesday nights, right? We at one point, for all kinds of reasons, 3 years ago or so, we discontinued the Wednesday service, and we put that energy into the children, youth, and family events that happen on Wednesday night. And so that's what I want to talk to you about first. I mean, you've heard the announcement already about kind of some of the numbers, but that's what I want to lean into a little bit. So on Wednesday evenings, just so you know what happens for everybody, right? We come and have pizza. We have a little kind of mini worship service with some songs. We do a messy game. Keep in mind, kids are sitting in school for 8 hours or whatever. There's a lot of, kids sitting for that long is hard enough. And then bring them to church, where most of them don't entirely generally want to be there anyway because they've already been sitting. We try to get a lot of energy and be goofy and let 12-year-olds be 12-year-olds. So we do a messy game. Has anyone seen, I should have brought pictures of these things. Anyone seen these messy games on social media? Yeah, some of you have. There's a rule, and so the 6th graders who came in this year, their parents too, we had to show them the rule. And the rule is, if you don't want to get wet, you don't want to be messy, and you don't want to be embarrassed, don't raise your hand, right? That way they know what they're getting into. And trust me, they know after 1 week what they're getting into, and they end up messy or wet or embarrassed or whatever. It's just a lot of fun. A lot of laughter and things like that. Anyway, that's the messy game. Then we move on to a lesson, and then small groups, and then at 7:45, hard stop. We're done. So an hour and 15 plus minutes or so, and we knock out a lot of things. In that time, Club Z, which is K through 5th grade, the Edge, which is confirmation, which is 6th through 9th grade right now, but next year it'll be 6th through 8th grade, right? Because we made a shift. So there's some grandfather clausing in to be done through 9th grade. And then Awaken, which is our senior high, which I'll talk about in a second. But what the other parts of the other things that we do on Wednesday nights is roughly every month there's monthly fellowship events. There's also monthly service projects. I don't know why I thought I had that up there, but there's that top. Monthly service projects, monthly fellowship events. We have a retreat once a year, which is called Youth Quake. We brought 2 vanfuls last year. Those of you who followed on social media, we got stuck in a blizzard and we had a van breakdown. Anyone recalls that? It's a lot of fun. I had a youth professor, Paul Hill, back in the late 90s. He was like the ELCA youth ministry guru in the country. And he would tell all the stories of the things he would do to create stories for youth, like pull spark plugs in the bus and make them walk the last half mile up the hill to go skiing, right? Just so there was a story to tell, because these aren't about what you do, it's about the story. I did not force the van to break down, I can promise. But it did happen, and we're still talking about it. And then summer mission trips, or our summer trips, I should say. We used to do a mission trip every summer, I think, before I was here, or right up when I got here. We actually now rotate that, because I think there are also other things that are important. So we do a mission trip, like every 3 years. We do the ELCA youth gathering on the 2nd year. And the 3rd year, we're doing outdoor stuff. So we went to the Boundary Waters this year. So this coming summer, we'll rotate back up to mission trip. So we're giving them a varied experiences. Everybody likes something different. So we want to do enough to rotate kids through. So that's what happens. Now here's what's kind of exciting. This year for faith formation is Sunday morning. That's Sunday school, right? We actually have 40 kids registered as of Friday, I think that's nearly double of last year. That's what Anna has said. Now, I haven't seen that number, but I've heard somebody say it's nearly double. I think that's right. Club Z, which is, again, these three are our Wednesday nights. Club Z, we have 27. That is certainly nearly double. We have 38 in confirmation, and for the first time, and at least what I've been told, most of you have been here a very long time, but certainly since I was here and in the years of COVID, we haven't had a senior high youth group for a very long time. We have 9 senior high kids who actually physically registered, not just showed up. There are some kids that just will show up, but actually physically registered to actually come on Wednesday nights. And these are kids, most of them went through confirmation the past 2 years, and they don't want to stop coming. They want to keep coming on Wednesday night. Now, I don't know if you've been paying attention to youth culture in churches lately, but that's not nothing. That's a big, big deal. The positive is that we've got 74 signed up to be in that youth room every Wednesday night. That doesn't count the 20 adults that it takes to help make that happen. And I think that puts us over fire code. I'm not sure. Sarah, close your ears. So that's a hugely positive thing. That's actually, we need a few more adults. But that's the stuff you don't see all the time. And so some of that energy has certainly shifted from a Wednesday night service where we were averaging maybe 30, 35, 40 sometimes. I think that's what the average was, somewhere in there. And we've put all our eggs into the kind of CYF basket. And now we're, with adults, we're short of 100 registered for every week. So that's CYF. I'm going to stop there. Thoughts, questions, comments? Yeah?
The trips that the kids go on that you were talking about, is that funded mostly by parents? Is there any funding from the church? How does that work?
Great question is about funding. Is it funded mostly by parents or is it funded by the church? And I'm repeating for the room but also for online. It's both. So you guys are very generous as a congregation. So we do the youth stock. And that has happened for a while. I think that was well before I was here. And it depends on the trip, right? So the mission trips, especially, the mission trips can be on the cheaper side. Outdoor trips are on the cheaper side. The ELCA gathering is ridiculously expensive. So we raise as much as we can. It gets divided among the participants. We do always say to parents and kids that nobody is kept from going due to financial reasons. Money should never keep anyone away from the church, including their friends. So we also take that into account when we split the monies up, or sometimes I go to a family and say, hey, can there's a family in need without sharing names. Would you be willing to sponsor one of these kids to go because the families can't afford it? So the families, we make sure they do pay something because I do think it's important if they can, but it's always a moving target because costs are always in flux. It depends on so like the youth quake trip is about $350 or so all in. We subsidize a little bit of that, and mostly for the adults that go, because I don't want the adults that go to have to pay anything. They're giving up their time. They're spending 48 hours with kids in the bus and in the hotel. Man, that's enough. And people that want to pitch in. So those costs also they're up a little more to subsidize the adults that are going. But the congregation is really quite generous, and I haven't had any family at Zumbro say no when I've come to them and asked for a few extra dollars to help a given family, and we've never kept anyone from going due to financial reasons, and we never will. So, good question. Any other thoughts, questions? Show me if you can. Yeah.
Can you tell us, tell me, I'm not familiar with Minecraft and Dungeons and Dragons and so on, so when I read the words about that, I keep thinking, okay.
The question is about things like Minecraft and Dungeons and Dragons to be filled in, and I assume your question is just what is that?
Basically.
I mean, and how does that maybe... So really you have to, that's a great question. So, this is first of all, Minecraft is a video game, right? But it can be a community video game where everyone logs in from different devices, right? Different locations even. You could do this while everybody is at home and then sign in to the same server or the same computer and all play this game together from various locations. What Pastor Anna has done, to her credit, is to say, listen, we all know you like to game. You like to play this game Minecraft and build things and do whatever they do in that space. But let's all do it in the same space. And so, as you see, we have a fair amount of technology here now. So we wheel out every TV we can possibly find, and Tim has logged on and I think he's created our own server for this, right? So we have a Zumbro Minecraft server. So we get these kids in this building on scores of TVs, well, not scores, but a lot of TVs, and they basically play a video game, but in the same place together, eating the same treats. And so she's kind of taking things that kids are already doing at home and bringing them together to do it in community. So it's really a simple, it's not that much different than saying, hey, I know you guys all play Monopoly at home, let's come to church and play Monopoly. So it's a community building thing. So is there anything that we might traditionally call church about it? No, but there's nothing traditionally church about coffee and donuts either. You know what I'm saying? So it's the same concept of saying, listen, we're going to do what it takes to get these kids together and be in community together. Dungeons and Dragons is not that different. It's a game. It's a community game. You play with other people. When I was a kid, it was only a game that you played around a table all night long because we didn't have things like, computers. And now you can do all that stuff online. Again, the whole concept is, okay, this is the end thing. This is what lots of kids are doing and interested in. Even if it's a video or gaming stuff, we're going to bring people here and do it in the same space together to build community. And what was interesting is, I'm going to talk about young adults too. We had a young adult night, and about half of those young adults, 20-somethings, all play Dungeons and Dragons too. It was shocking. I just didn't. It's a hot thing right now, and so that's just what people are doing. And so Pastor Anna, in my opinion, to her credit, is saying, oh, well, let's do that as a church family. Okay. And so it's bringing all kinds of kids. Good question. I don't know if that quite answered your question, but okay. Yeah, you're welcome. Anything else? Any other questions about children, youth, and family? Yeah.
So how did your first ever young people's dinner go?
I didn't even pay him, but that's next slide. Good segue, Walter.
I'll take.
You know what? I think I'm going to get you this Norwegian sweater I saw as a thank you. So, interestingly, now, and we're going to talk about new members too, but the trend for people visiting churches is they will not tell you that they're here for weeks, right? If they're church shopping. Right? It's kind of like if you go shopping to Macy's, you may not buy something right away. You're going to go check out the other stores, and then you might go back to get the thing you want, right? To the thing that caught your eye. So people church shop, and they always have, but they certainly church shop a lot. And so even though we notice, kind of anecdotally, we notice new people, especially those of us up front from a pastor standpoint, we'll see new people and all that kind of stuff. We don't necessarily have their contact information because they're not ready for that. So keep that in mind. We have noticed at the second service a lot of visiting young adults over the summer in particular, like the past 10 weeks. And some of you are second service people and you've seen some of that. And so it was really more of a whim than anything as we talked to the staff. It's like, we need to do something. We have nothing. We haven't had anything. I don't think we've ever. Most churches, Lutheran churches, don't do young adult stuff. Let's just be honest about that. They just don't. But we've had enough where I thought, let's just do something and see who signs up. And so my wife and I decided that we'd do young adult night, just dinner at my house. That simple, no agenda, dinner, right? So we put the sign up out there, and 15, almost all of whom have only started attending Zumbro in the past 2 months.
Wow.
Including, because it was last Sunday, including 2 people who had come to church for the first time at the block party. Showed up. Because we spotted them, because as we do that, we have this event, let's invite them, right? And they showed up. So, so that was a start. Well, I don't even know what to say. It was dinner. And when they would walk in, knock on the door, you go get the door, they'd walk in, hey, nice to meet you. Some of them I hadn't really met yet before because they signed up, right? That kind of thing. And I warned them, I reminded them, I said, this is not youth group, I don't have a plan. And it wasn't. It was dinner, and they're young adults, and and my world is you can figure it out. You can shake hands, introduce each other, and literally it was the most awkward thing on the planet. We have an island in the middle of our kitchen, And I'm pretty much going to the front door, answering the door as people come. And people would go into the kitchen, and there's soda, and there's water, and there's beer, and there's margaritas because we had tacos or something like that. And so there's drinks and stuff like that. And everyone just kind of stood around the island in the kitchen staring at each other. It was hilarious. It was the most awkward thing in the world until somebody brought up D&D. And then about half the rooms, Dungeons and Dragons, until someone brought up Dungeons and Dragons, and about half the room started buzzing, and they started talking about their whatever game, and they sat down at a table, and then the other group went into the other dining room and sat around a different table, and 2 different conversations started, and boom, 2 hours later we were done. I mean, that was it. So I asked them, I said, would you want to do something like this again? I mean, what are we thinking? So maybe once a month or so we're going to try to do dinner or a game night, or like a board game night seemed to be interesting to people. Some things going on in town that they were interested in that we might sign up and do. And we're just going to kind of, they're young adults, so it's got to be, we don't really have a lot of margin staff-wise to really do that, so it really has to be self-directing. But I also think it's super important to make sure that happens and continues to happen. And so we'll figure that out. But that's one of those things that you need to be aware of. Thanks, Walter. Walter actually didn't set me up. That was clearly the next slide. But it's super exciting. I don't know why. I don't know what the deal is. But I have an idea of what's catching them and stuff like that. But we haven't gotten close enough to have that conversation. We usually do that at the new to Zumbro gatherings when we say, hey, what is it that drew you to Zumbro? That kind of thing. So, yeah, pretty cool. And a couple of them were here again this morning already. So, any other questions about that? The age groups, that's a great question. Age groups for young adult really were kind of 21 to 25, and you kind of hovered in, just at that new to drinking age. I mean, that kind of crowd, maybe still in college, maybe pretty much like just out. And then 30, right? There's 3 couples there who I'm doing 2 of their weddings. 2 of them I'm doing weddings for, and the third one I don't like. So then the kind of 28 to 30. So very 8 years apart, completely different stages of life. So what they want is very different, which isn't actually where the rooms were divided. We're not along those lines. It was strictly divided along Dungeons and Dragons. You either played in that room or you didn't, and you're in that room. It was that simple, and age had nothing to do with it. It was weird. I don't know what else to say. It just is. That's where people are into it. So, yeah, good question. Any other questions about that? So we get a lot of questions about membership. How are we doing with members? This actually is already a little bit old. I saw at least one registration come in. It was either Friday or Saturday, so I saw it this morning. So these things it's a little tricky to track, but Carrie does all of this tracking. So this is what's going on in 2025, right? People who have already become members, the whole kind of process, if you will, 23. The members in process or are interested, meaning they filled out a contact card, or they've emailed us and said one way or another that they're interested in membership. Somewhere in that step of the process is 21. Those who have registered now for New to Zumbro, that's different. This number, no one's registered. This is just people who have already turned in a card, and they're somewhere between there and registering. So those who have registered for New to Zumbro next week is 12. And then this one is an interesting number. These are people who might have even been here for a minute. They give, they participate in choir or I don't know, something, but they have no interest in membership. This is a growing trend number in churches, and it has been for 20 years. Right? There are people who don't want their name on a list. They don't care if they vote on anything. They might actually tithe. They might tithe more than some of you. I mean, seriously, but they just don't want to be members. That's not where it's not what church is to them or whatever. I don't know how to say it. But we keep that in the number too, because we have to be aware. These are people that will never show up in these numbers. Right? And then that total is 48 or whatever that is. So.
What was last year?
Total last year was, I want to say it was 55. It was over, maybe it was only 50, but right around the 50 mark. We'll say that, and I think that's what it was. Again, it's hard to track these numbers a little bit because it's very fluid. Carrie does a great job, but I see them all the time, and it kind of... but the process is, just a lot of people have the process. The Connect cards are successful. When people are ready, then they give us their information. But it's an active step, meaning because we don't hand them out, because it would be very expensive to hand them out every Sunday to everybody. We don't have those things that go in the back of pews or chairs. You know what I'm saying? Where you put all that information. We don't have that. So we're trying to figure out, because people. The other thing is, to ask people to use a pen or pencil and fill something out nowadays. There's a generation that still does that, but there's a whole couple generations that don't. So one of the things we have some things we're going to experiment. At second service, we don't have a bulletin, but we're going to experiment a bit with a static bulletin. So if you remember on Easter, we had just a half-fold piece of paper because all the music was on the screens and it was familiar stuff. And on the inside, it had, welcome to Zumbro, and then it had just an order. It didn't have all the things we're doing, but just, hymn, prayer, announcements, we kind of had that. And then some other information on the bottom. We're going to practice with a static one of those for about 3 months. So I think this week or next week or the week after it'll start for the 10:30 service. And on it in the back, we'll also have a QR code. So that you don't have to now go get the Connect card. You can just QR code right from your pew, because we will put it in your hands. And then if you're a returning member, put it back and recycle it. But this way we're getting all of it in their hand. We're getting a welcome to Zumbro in their hand, and technology is a beautiful thing. A lot of people will just use a QR code and digitally use the Connect card. We're going to see if that works. So we want to take a step out, is what I'm saying. As opposed to go find one of these things, we're going to put a digital version in your hand and tie it into other messaging.
You need to talk about this before I came down, but do you know where the new members are going, 10:30, 8:30, or which service is going?
10:30.
Are they?
Yeah, very, very obviously. Yeah. That's all kinds of reasons. For the last 40 years of this research, George Barna and Pew Research are the two kind of statisticians that really rise to the top when it comes to churches. And across the board, there are two things that divide people on worship, period. Style and time. Full stop. Full stop. Right? There are people, which is why we do 2 services. Honestly, it's why I'm adamant about it. Because people will not go to a certain kind of service if it's not their language. Full stop. And so it as much as it might be my style or your style, it's actually a total barrier to a huge percentage of your possible members. So is worship time. So is worship time. As much. Some people say, I don't care what the style is, I'm going at 10:30 because I'm not getting up. And they don't care what it is. They don't care if it was jazz, hip-hop, rock and roll, or choir music. It's irrelevant. Time is everything. It's about 50-50 on that split. So, yeah, right? So, it's always a crapshoot. Which service do you do at what time? It's as relevant as having more than one style. You just got to decide and go, and that's who you are. That's kind of the decision. So, why are they coming to 10:30? I'm guessing it's 50-50. Some probably really like the time, and some probably really like band-led worship. Yeah, good question. Other questions? Yeah.
How many Luther students are attending church regularly?
That's a great question. The last couple of years, I would say none. I think that's fair to say. I just did not regularly. They would pop in. Interestingly, this year, there seems to be a bit of a shift. Now, way too early, but there are some. I saw at least one this morning. Last week, there were some here. The week before, I know there were 4 or 5 that came to the 10:30 service. I think there's 1 or 2 that have joined the choir. Is that true?
That's correct.
1, okay. Some are doing, food truck. Is that true? Yeah, food truck. So they are plugging in this year a little more than at least since I've been here. Now, I will credit Sarah and Carrie and Jeanette and the team for that, because they do a great job of welcoming Luther. They do a welcome to Zumbro. They come down and say hi to the students. They let them know all of the opportunities, right? There's food. We feed them when there's finals and things like that, which obviously hasn't happened yet this year. But they're, as a team, they've really done a lot of outreach to let those students know what is available to them if they choose. So, but that's where the credit goes to that. So we're seeing a bit of a shift, but it's really early. But, college student, that's a tricky one, right? Yeah, it's a tricky one, and especially when in the nursing thing, because some of them will work as PCAs or something over at Mayo, and they might work. Those are, non-class time. They might be working. My daughter did. So, so I think that's a good number or a good ministry to keep open, but I don't think the numbers mean much because there's so many other factors at that stage of life.
I don't know if you mentioned this before you started, but the choir has moved from Wednesday evenings to Thursday at 6:30 in order to get out of the way of the CFY thing, and also to make it available to high schoolers or the Luther students. So we do have one new alto from that, and we're waiting to see if we can get some high schoolers to come.
Yep.
But that's the whole purpose of that. After decades of meeting on Wednesday night, the
Yeah.
choir is now on Thursday night.
Yeah, so just to make sure everyone can hear, including there, right? The purpose of the shift of choir rehearsal from Wednesday to Thursday is to pick up young adults and possibly senior high students, so that because of the overlapping schedules, right? I would actually say to comfort people, I would not. I mean, I would not even expect that number to shift for a couple of years, because this is a cultural question, not just a calendar question, right? It takes time for a culture to lean into. That's when choir is, right? It's rare that you have people literally on the edge of their seat waiting for the calendar to change in their favor. It just, right? But they'll also never be able to go Thursday unless you change it, right? So these cultural shifts, I think, do take time. I think that's also true what we are seeing in children, youth, and family, right? Just because we did this one thing, it's taken a couple of years for it to get some legs. It's taken 2 years for us to actually have a good-sized senior high group. It's the first time because of the culture that's being built before them. So be aware that shifts may see immediate results, but a lot of these are going to take time because they're cultural kinds of things. Yeah.
Did any Luther kid come to your dinner?
I actually did not invite them. Did any Luther students come to our dinner? I intentionally did not, because if I invite one, I have to invite them all, and I don't have space. And it's a different crowd. I mean, it's a different. I was wanting to open that up. That's a great question. I was wanting to open up to people who are actually searching or seeking for churches. That isn't quite what our Luther students are doing, right? Now, there's a whole team that does those monthly Luther meals, and that's kind of for them. But, if all those nursing students came to my house, wow. Yeah. So it's other people. That's a fair question. That's a very fair question. All right. Anything else on those funds? Yeah.
I just have to tell you an experience this morning. This lady and her son and daughter-in-law and the baby were coming out of church, and she said, "Hi, Chris," and I said, "Oh, hi," and then I said, "Have I met you before?" She goes, "No, it's our first time, but good. Your name's Zahn." But it was a young couple. She's a grandma, and they are looking around for a church. So we brought over Pastor Tim, and I just think that, I don't know, how can we spot those if we always can't spot them, but man, it's a moment when it happens.
How can we spot them? So basically, there's a family in church that she spotted, first time visiting, church shopping is my guess. And that I would say it's also a tricky question, because how do we spot them? Yes, and over-spotting them will make them run away.
Yeah, right.
Let's be super clear about that, right? There is such a thing in churches as over-friendly.
Yeah.
So I think we're finding a good happy medium. I mean, you're right, and we work pretty hard at saying, hey, so-and-so, or that's a new person, or who is that? And I think the congregation, meaning beyond the staff, also does a pretty good job. So I think we're in a good place, even if it doesn't entirely appear that way. But you noticed. That's enough.
They noticed first. I thought that
But
was
they noticed, right? So that's awesome. So why are people visiting? Well, we don't entirely know, but we know we have a lot of visitors the last 3 months, right? That's true. So we've one of our goals this year was to increase our social media presence, and that is both quality and volume, right? And so we've shifted things, and Julie's doing a lot of work, and we actually have a production team. So after worship, there's a subsection of the staff. So Julie, Matt, Josh, Jeremy, me, I think is who that is. And we talk about social media. We talk about ads, we talk about posts, we talk about the creation of what's next, all of that kind of stuff. It's about 15-20 minutes, unless we get down a creative rabbit hole, and then usually everyone gets frustrated with Matt and I because we're the ones that just kind of start shooting ideas and everyone else is looking at their watch. But that's how that goes. But our goal was to increase our quality of content, to work on a studio, which I'll talk about here in a second, our podcast options, and the sermon cast. So starting from the bottom up, we've had, and we do, post the entire worship service, right, streams to Facebook. You can access it through the website, the app, and of course on YouTube and Facebook. And what we did is we also know, because we can track these things, and we do track these things, is that almost everybody, not everybody, but the vast majority, they don't watch the front part of worship, and they don't watch the second part of worship. They watch the sermon. So why not make that easier for those people to access? And so that's the birth of the sermon cast, which is audio only. What Jeremy or Julie, I don't entirely know the process, but they cut that down so it's just the sermon. They take out the pauses from when the reader is walking up and all that kind of stuff. And then we put a front bumper and a back bumper. Hey, welcome to Zumbro Online. If you want to give to this ministry, thank you for your support, blah, 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 right? And then it's just the sermon that you can listen as a podcast in your car, in your workout, on your walk, whatever. And this is very quickly growing, which is not entirely a surprise. I mean, we pretty much figured that would happen because that's how most people are consuming online church, right? That's just the trend. And it's easy and things like that. That also is why you have seen, if you haven't seen, I guess I'll say it now, why we won't be doing the radio anymore, right? People, you go tell me who's joining a church for the first time or even accessing a church for the first, occasionally on the radio. It's just such a dwindling number. There's a cost to it. And so we're shifting that cost to this stuff. Because I just think this is more effective and more efficient. So, I mean, there are a handful of people who we know will not be able to access Zumbro Lutheran Church because we're not doing the radio anymore. But we also know there are significantly more that are plugging in this way. So that's one thing. Podcasts. So downstairs we have built a studio. Dirt cheap, by the way. I'll tell you, it is. If you were to tell me that you wanted to build a studio, I would tell you you'd need $6,000 to $10,000. Low end, right? Just costs money because you got to do sound deadening, you got to have a space, you got a camera, audio, you got all this stuff. How much did we spend?
$2,300.
$2,300. You're welcome. Only because I've done it before. So we have a more than a makeshift studio. It's going to be really nice, and we're going to start actually creating online content in the form of video podcasts, and it's going to be in 3 categories. And we're almost done. We have one last piece that hopefully comes in this coming week. Actually, we're going to do Zumbro info. So this is supposed to be news. So news or Zumbro information. So if I want to address the congregation, if we want those kinds of things, we'll shoot it to the camera, and it'll be available for everybody and wherever Julie posts it. So there's Zumbro news. There's testimonials or faith stories. So when we want to talk about the food truck, right, that's a form of testimonial. It's a ministry story. What's happening at Zumbro and why does Zumbro matter and how is Zumbro making a difference, both in the community but also in faith? That's this. Oh, that's fun. Okay. So that's what this is. Faith stories, testimonials, things like that. And then get to know. So this will be congregational. So for a while, we've had some feedback that people don't know who our staff is, right? That's a good problem, by the way. When you have a big staff and a big congregation, you don't know everybody. So this is going to be, I have a whole plan that the staff doesn't know about yet, that we're going to interview the staff members one-on-one that you'll get to kind of watch on a monthly basis through the year. So we'll stretch that out as a get-to-know-your-staff kind of thing. And maybe volunteers, and we'll extend it, and it'll go, but it'll be a fun, kind of lighthearted way of getting. So we have these 3 buckets that we're going to start cranking out podcasts, content. In this section, will also be things from the pastors individually. Like we might, I don't know how this is going to work. It's going to depend on time and energy, but the things that happen this week. We don't have a good venue to address current events. I'll be honest, the sermons in church are not a great place to do most of that, right? Because there's certain expectations. It's a different kind of space, certainly not a political space or a social space. I know we can disagree on that. That's fair. That's a fair debate. But it also doesn't mean that we should be silent on certain things. And so this is a good place for the world to know where your pastors or your leadership is at on various things, without having people coming to church not knowing what to expect. That make sense? So that's what's happening there. Other social media things that Tim gave me some numbers for. So how many of you, very honestly, are not on social media and have no idea what we produce? A few of you. Okay. So we do have, just for some information, I guess I didn't test this. It probably won't work. But we created a confirmation video to invite families in the Rochester area to confirmation, in case theirs isn't up to par. I don't know how to say that, right? But seriously, we wanted the world of church people who look for confirmation to know there's possibly a decent option out there. So we created a confirmation video that's been seen by 8,000 people in Rochester. That's a lot. Surprisingly, the second video to date is the Dinka back to school event, seen by 4,000. As Tim pulled these numbers this morning, that surprised both of us. I thought our number 2 is, if you've seen the welcome video that the staff created, Welcome to Zumbro. I thought that was this number 2, but it's not. It's the Dinka one. Number 3, oddly enough, Bruce. I know. You know the picture we posted from the staff of your gracious providing of dinner? So Bruce is on personnel, and he graciously, he's a phenomenal, I've joked about this, but it's true, phenomenal smoke master, grill master. And he provides a 3-meat rule, but always brisket. And I'm learning. And we took a picture of the whole staff at Bruce's house, and that has been seen by 4,000 people in Rochester. I know. Well, we didn't put your address. You're safe. We're seeing regularly over 1,000 views on every Facebook post, on average. That's huge compared to just a year ago. And our website gets roughly 1,000 unique URL views every month, and that's up about 10% from a year ago. So why are we getting some foot traffic? I think it's that. I really do. I think just social media, right? That's where people see, hear about things. And so, we have the staff. We're channeling energy to that. We're creating content. We'll be creating more, and we're getting kind of the word out that we're here and what we do.
So where do we stack up on social media contact with Bethel and Mount Olive?
From a Lutheran standpoint, we're way ahead. I guarantee we're way ahead. Yeah.
I kind of track a little bit the word on fire.
For nothing.
No.
Right, no, I'm just saying for everybody else.
I'm talking from an awareness standpoint.
Yes.
That space and what.
We have the other churches, without saying names, but other people on staff of other Lutheran churches in town making comments to us, staff at Zumbro, about it, and kind of, you can tell they're frustrated because of the quality. I mean, they've said that. Like, what in the world? Can we hire? What are you doing? Like, how are you getting this kind of traction? Who are you hiring? Can I hire that person? Those kinds of things. So I know, and then seeing the numbers, I know from a Lutheran standpoint, I'm not trying to sell. I'm really not. I think we are just, way ahead of the other Lutheran churches in town. Sarah, do you have anything to put on? No idea. She has no idea. But other Lutheran churches in town. But that's not our competition, to be fair. Right? Our competition is Budridge, Eaglebrook, the Echo Church. That's our competition, and we're not there yet. But this kind of stuff will take another step. Very few people look for churches based on denomination anymore. In fact, denominational titles, most statistics show today, unless you grew up in the church, so if you're 40 and younger, denominational titles are a barrier to your church. They are not an invitation. For you and your generation looking through most of you, that was the invitation. You're looking for your Lutheran church. People don't care. Sorry. Maybe they should. I'm not saying they should or shouldn't. People don't care. So Zumbro. We put Zumbro Church out there, Zumbro, right? We don't put Lutheran in everything. It's there. It's not coming off the sign and all that. But Zumbro. Why? Because Lutheran might not get them past the first 3 seconds of your video. And for those that do want to look for Lutheran, it's not going to stop them if they didn't quite see Lutheran. They won't even notice. See what I'm saying? So those are the kind of things that we're aware of. And yeah, so we're definitely ahead of the game when it comes to other Lutheran churches in town. We are not ahead of the game when it comes to churches in town. But we're trying. We're doing a great job. I mean, honestly, and it's a great question. Word on Fire has, what, 1 million?
Well, I mean, but that's just
Yeah.
a space, and I haven't checked the other
Yeah.
more evangelical ones. I mean, Eaglebrook, obviously, the whole service is social media.
Right, yeah, the Eaglebrook, the whole service is online and streamed and all that fun. It's made for streaming, is how I should say it. Our services are made for the room, and we try to stream them. Other services are made for streaming and invite people into the room. So there's some philosophies there that matter. So I still want to be fair, I still want to change camera locations and camera qualities in the sanctuary, right? I do, just like you've heard me talk about it. We don't have a single natural camera angle in that entire room. Nobody sits where those cameras are, and nobody ever will because it's up on the wall. You need natural camera angles straight onto your preacher, those kinds of things, because you have to think of the viewer, right? That kind of thing. What is the online experience? We don't have it's okay, like it's not going to cost a ton of money, but we're not there. We have other priorities, but that certainly is the kind of thing we're thinking about. One more, and then we'll take one more question. Oh yeah, go ahead.
So, what about the ministry of chatbots?
The ministry of chatbots. Since I have no idea what you're talking about, other than I do know what a chatbot is. What are we talking about?
Well, yeah, just the fact that a lot of younger kids are much more willing to share something with a chatbot on a religious level than maybe regular church.
Question is that young people are more willing, likely, or seems to be in this day and age, to share something with a chatbot than maybe people in a church or things like that. Let's just call it what it is, AI, right? What does artificial intelligence, what role does it have in this conversation of church growth, relationship building, things like that? I would honestly say nobody knows. I mean, I think it's way too new, especially with the advent of ChatGPT in the conversations. I don't think we know its implications, other than to say, I think part of what we do is the opposite of isolation. Right? So artificial intelligence is convincing conversationally, but it's not a thing. We're not to a point where the singularity is hit, and artificial intelligence is accelerating to a point where it's going to take over the world. That's a whole other conversation. But we are at a place where it is convincing enough where it isolates people into conversations with a computer. Okay? So, other than not knowing what it does, I will say that we are in the business of being against individual isolationism of sorts, right? I think what we want to do is bring people together. Even online is better to bring people together online in a digital or virtual space than it is to outsource to AI, we'll put it that way. So that's about, I don't know what else to say other than I think that's, I have all kinds of theological things to say, but that's for another book and another time. Last thing I was going to say is Dinka. And I could have put them first, maybe I should have. The likely fastest growing part of our congregation is probably the Dinka community. We don't know that for sure because, of course, that community tracks numbers differently than we do. And the pattern of participating is different than ours is, and so those numbers are fuzzy at best. I will say that every time I'm here, they worship in this space every Sunday afternoon. They'll be here today. Is that they have as many kids as they do adults. And we've had to make sure there's at least 2 spaces for their younger kids and older kids. I will say right now, I think we as a community, and I've talked with William and Pastor Joseph about this, as well as the Bishop of South Sudan, who is recently here, I think we need to stop seeing Dinka as a separate ministry, and we need to see them as a second of a multi-site congregation. I'm going to tell you right now, and Other people don't agree. This is out there for a debate, right? For congregational and leadership debate, but I've already mentioned it in a lot of other circles. I think we need to see Dinka as a second site. They happen to worship in this building, but it's a second site that should have council representation because they worship differently, and the 10:30 worships differently, and the 8:30 worships differently, and that's okay. Some of you have no desire to go to the 10:30 service. Raise your hand and say amen.
Amen.
Right? Because it's not your music. You're never going.
No, it's not the music, it's the time.
It's the time. All right, that's right. 50% is this time. The volume, right? And that's all legitimate. And the truth is, as much as we say, let's go and worship with the Dinka, it's in another language, and trust me, you don't know if it's an hour and a half or 3 hours. It's not going to happen, and that's okay. Part of embracing differences is not about making us all alike and conforming. It's about saying, yeah, they're part of us, and they speak a different language. So the fact that there's a whole Dinka community here, we need to see them as Zumbro, not a side ministry that kind of gets their leftovers. I mean, I'm speaking a little bit, like I'm selling, but you get what I'm saying. They are us. And the South Sudanese bishop who was here agreed. He's like, he and I were talking about this very thing, that he's like, they need to remember, the current Dinka community needs to remember that their kids are Americans. And just like go back a couple generations with Norwegians or Swedes or Germans or whatever, right? One generation in, that Norwegian hymnal is no longer viable. That's going to be true. And guess where we want these kids to see as a church home? Zumbro. Okay? So I think we need to move on this. I think this is super important. I think it's super important to our identity as a community that actually embraces diversity. Because that's what it looks like. Not that they worship with us or like us or vice versa. It's that we still embrace the same mission of sharing God's love with the world.
Is there a way of sharing the CYF program with?
Already have. They haven't taken me up on it this year. But when I'm here, when I worship with them and I share communion with them, we've already made that invitation. You saw a couple families maybe, who joined us at the block party. This is, again, a cultural thing, kind of like the choir thing. It's going to take years for that kind of melding to happen, and that's okay. But we have to be diligent about not just the invitation, but the melding of community from an organizational standpoint. Because once they have a voice, as opposed to just inviting, I know you don't understand this, but it's one thing to, hey, come to our event. I can imagine what they feel like. I don't want to go to your confirmation event. You guys are crazy. And we are. But once we're making decisions together, and once we're moving forward together, we start to see some of these things that we do as a community as truly bringing the whole community together. Like what we should have done, and we did try, but we could try harder, is we should have had Dinka lead some music on Sunday, because the block party is a representation of the two cultures we currently have, and it needs to represent the three cultures, and that's on us, not on them. So next year, right, exactly. Things we learn, things we learn moving forward. All right, worship is starting. I love you. Go in peace and serve the Lord.